Welcome to Theory Paranormal. This is Pax with my co-host Dalton. This is going to be season 2, podcast episode number 10. And it is going to be on fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance. So, when I say those 4 words, fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance, Dalton, what comes to your mind?
Well, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing as always. Thanks for asking. Hope things in your world are going great.
Never changes till I hit the lottery. But I don't know, man. Fate. I mean, without reading like out of the dictionary, fate. I guess is kind of like predetermined deal of your life. Destiny. I would say destiny is, something along the lines of fate. I guess without going too much into detail. Chance. Heck, we take chances every day. I mean, look, and I hate to even say like this podcast, we took a chance, we brought it out there. People seem to like it. It was a chance thing. But coincidence, man, I don't know. I'm not too big on coincidence. I'm not a very big coincidence thing. There's not much of a definition for coincidence. It just says like 2 things lining up by meaningless chance. Okay, so that's even telling you how you're supposed to like rely on coincidence. I mean, you could be doing something in life and something happens and you go, "Oh, coincidence?" No, it might have been in your path already and it just seemed like a coincidence, but it was already meant for you for come across, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, it, I can go with the fate and the destiny and maybe the chance because you take chances every day, but fate, is predetermined events with implications of some underlying plan or logic, generally used in relation to larger events, often has supernatural undertones. Which, like I said, when you're born, I mean, do you think fate? Do you think that your fate is already planned out for your life, or what do you think about that?
Well, before I answer that, I'll give you my spin on those 4 words.
Go ahead.
I think fate and destiny are pretty much almost intertwined, except fate is, in my opinion, the way things are gonna be. A destiny is a path that can be, but can be altered. A coincidence is, in my mind, a remarkable concurrence of events, circumstances, without apparent causal connection. Now, that sounded very dictionary because that's more or less where it came from, that answer. But, coincidence is just 2 points of things happening together that, for all intents and purposes, it is irony. It's ironic. It's, makes you go, what are the odds of that happening? Chance, in my viewpoint, depending on the way you use that word, I think that is a probability type scenario where what's the chance of this happening? So as far as it goes with all 4 of those words, for myself personally, deep diving in my life, I wholeheartedly believe each one of those exists for a specific reason or purpose, because I, multiple times in my life, was destined to have a particular path or way of life. And then something happened that fated me to alter and change completely where my life was. I had some instances in my life where things happened and I was at a particular place and time, or I had a conversation where somebody was able to express something to me that gave me new information at a pivotal moment in my life. And because of that, I was able to alter either a decision I made or alter a major life path that I made. And then in that heat of the moment of making that decision, I took a chance on what I thought was best for myself. See what I did there? Tied all those in together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ultimately these four words are going to be viewed differently depending on the person that they apply to. I think a lot of it has to do with personal experiences. I think it has to do with upbringing of what you believe, depending on religious background or academia, educational background, or things that you believe in that don't have to do with either one of those, but other things. You know, it's one of those things to where you just roll the dice, you take a chance, and you hope for the best. But
Well, and so you talk about chance and so you saying like chance is like a luck thing or
I think chance is a probability, a statistical
ability?
a statistical probability type thing. If we had to use modern day vernacular on it,
So what about it? So coincidence you're saying is kind of like luck?
no. Well, a coincidence is an occurrence of events that under normal circumstances wouldn't have normally happen, but they did. So, for instance, let's say hypothetically, okay, bad analogy that's coming up, got to forewarn everybody, but here we go. Let's say, for instance, you are in a boat and you have your phone with you and it's in one of those little clear containers that floats and you hit a hard wave and something happened and you were recording something and it flew out of your hand, landed in the lake. You're at the lake for the day having fun with friends. So you are putting the boat back on the dock and somebody comes up with a smaller boat that was fishing and then they start holding up and making a bunch of noise and everybody's looking at them from the dock and someone's like, "Oh, I just went by this area and I found this. Is this anybody's?" I mean, that's a coincidence that right after it happened, somebody just happened to come across your phone floating in a lake in the middle of the expanse of the whole lake, you know? I mean, when you think about the totality of that, that's to me that's coincidence. So that's how I would apply that
So you mentioned fate, coincidence, chance,
in destiny.
and destiny, but what about serendipity?
Serendipity. Isn't that like a five?
Seren 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 serendipity.
that's a
So
that's
serendipity,
that's
on
a
the other hand,
that's
is
a 5 syllable word. I usually only go up to four.
I know, right? That's why I had pronounced it wrong first time. Of course, my southern accent. But anyway, so serendipity, on the other hand, is an occurrence of unexpected, fortunate discoveries made by accident, highlighting the element of chance rather than predestination. In summary, fate suggests a controlled outcome, while serendipity emphasizes luck and chance. What's your thoughts on that?
I think serendipity is another way to roll together and use the words destiny and fate and just come up with a different word. And not only a different word, but put on a label. For instance, the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. Like a fortune of good luck happened, serendipity happened, and these people met and they went through all these trials and tribulations. But at that exact pivotal moment, their life brought them together and then they had a wonderful life. So,
That's, well, see, and I see that, it says, discoveries made by accident. So, but a lot of people, when you talk about meeting somebody like me and you when we met, I don't think it was as much serendipity as a basically a discovery by accident. I think that it might go to fate where we were put in each other's paths for a reason. I mean, a lot of people, I get a lot of people, like I could talk to somebody that I would never think I would talk to, and all of a sudden it comes to find that they need some help, and it's something I know. Let's say fixing their air conditioning unit, and they didn't have much money because ACs could be expensive, and a lot of people don't have a lot of money. So here I am talking to them in a bar or restaurant or wherever, and basically it might not have been a plan of mine to talk to this person about it. It might not, like, I would have never thought that my life would do that, would make those branches and find some people that need help. And so you go and they go, oh, my AC broke down and I don't have much money. Well, let me help you out. And then they always say, well, I think you were meant to be put in my path to to help me on this. And I'm like, well, you might be right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that really wouldn't be like fate. I mean, would that kind of be like serendipity or something else?
It very well could be. Uh, you know, serendipity is just a bunch of events by chance that had a happy or beneficial outcome. That was the whole purpose of that. So,
Right. So there's a chance, say we met by accident, by fortunate discovery, by accident. I don't know. This is why I've never really did any research on these things like this right here, because it's so
fast for opinion or probability.
yes, probability and accuracy.
Okay.
I mean, how accurate is it that okay, so I mean, was it my fate to do the things that I've done in my life? I don't I can't say that it was. I mean, maybe when I was born, I was predestined to do something.
Yeah, look at you using destiny. Nice.
Yeah, there you go. So maybe I was predestined to do something, but you know me, man, I think outside the box, and I'm always like when I see something or because like let's say driving trucks. If it's got a steering wheel and a shifter, I know how to operate or move it. It could be heavy equipment, it could be a crane, it could be whatever. But that was my drive to learn as much as I possibly can about anything that needs to be driven or operated. And I took that upon myself. Now, was that fate? Or was it just me doing basically, I don't know, destiny? On the other hand, implies a sense of choice and ability to shape one's future through personal actions and decisions. I think I'm more destined to do stuff than I have fate, if that makes sense.
No, without a doubt. Like I said, destiny, I think, can be altered. I think people can have many destinies. They can do many things and then make a choice, make a decision, take a chance on something, and then they change. And then that changes their fate ultimately. Some people would dare to argue that fate and destiny mean the same thing. I think it all depends on the way that you use it and what you are trying to arrive at ultimately for an explanation or your sentiment with the word. You know, one thing I read in a book, and I wish I could remember what the book was. This was when I was a young teenager, once upon a time. But there was a passage in it that struck me, and I couldn't really grasp it simply because of the fact I did not have enough life experiences to understand. But the passage went something like this, and I'm saying it loosely. They were talking about fate and destiny and life's purpose. And the passage was, throughout life, you're going to reinvent yourself many times, every 5 to 10 years. And also, you're going to have many challenges and tribulations, many things you have to get through, basically. And it said, if you want to really understand, to see how you progress as a person, take any 5 years of your life and really dissect it and look at it. And look at things that you're encountering as either a roadblock, a problem, something that was keeping you from progressing maybe financially, maybe academically, maybe professionally in a job, maybe personally in a relationship, or just personal in general. And look how you kept running into the same problem over and over. And then think long and hard and think about when it changed and how you advanced forward. And at that moment, when you realize when you advance forward, what was done different to go forward? Now, the reason why I say that is this. After you've done that with a period of 5 years of your life, any 5 years you want, when you do that with a earlier period of 5 years, look at your life 10 years ahead and see if any 5 year periods of your life prepared you for something perfectly in the future of your life. And I can almost guarantee anybody that does it will be amazed and scared at the same time, because then they will say, wow, this turned out how it needed to for me to attain this, for me to achieve this, for me to excel at this. And then you will see a little bit of semblance of fate and destiny, coincidence or chance. Everybody has a different story. Everybody has different accomplishments and trials and tribulations in their life to get through. But that was one of the most impactful, meaningful excerpts, sentiments I have ever read in my life, because it's still true to this day. Even as I get older, it's still applicable. So, with that in
Well,
mind, go ahead.
you still got everybody, you still got everybody that, walks around pretty much, everything happens for a reason, to nothing happens for any reason. And I don't know. I mean, what about, you know, if you believe in fate and you believe in destiny, coincidence, and all this, what would you think that you call it, like if somebody changed your path? I mean, you already kind of mentioned it in the, I guess, the destiny part, where somebody gave you some information but changed your path. But what if somebody, like, not like they were trying to change your path for the good, but just did it out of spite or something? What do you think you? I mean, I always wondered about that, because you talked about, getting some information, inside information that help you decide to go another way. So that would be destined. That would be a destiny, because you all of a sudden took your own personal actions and decisions off of what that person told you to do whatever it was that you were fixing to do. And you all of a sudden it turned out a little bit better because you had somebody that probably had a little bit more experience to help you with that. You understand what I'm saying there?
Oh, I completely do. And I can say this. That particular choice that I made, I was not privy to information, and then I received a phone call, and then I was given information. I literally, due to the circumstances, had to make a snap decision in the moment that would alter the rest of my life forever. And I made a decision. Well, because I made a decision, I ended up going with a different type of career. Relationships completely altered that I experienced. Opportunities completely were changed. If I wouldn't have made that particular decision when I did, I honestly only see one certain way my life would have went. So instead of saying I missed out on XYZ opportunity that was given to me, I look at it as a fortunate event that put me on the path to give me the things I have in my life now. Because there is no guarantee that if I would have chose the different path in the very beginning, I would have the same things I have now. And when I mean by things, I'm talking about people I've met. I'm talking about job opportunities. I'm talking about experiences that I've experienced around the world. Things like this. So a lot of people sometimes may say, well, I would have been better off if I would have done the other, knowing what I know now. Okay. Glass is half empty, half full. But the thing is I would like to think the majority of people in the world are able to take their experiences for what they are and to try to find the good out of it. Now, unfortunately, life doesn't work that way and it's not always going to be that way. But normally, people are fortunate to have what they have in their life.
Well, I also think that, I don't like, okay, so I go back to thinking outside the box, right? And I think a lot of people should do that instead of relying on these four things, fate, I understand, like, and I'm not going to kick off too much religious parts, but I think that, you do have a religious part where, you know, the Bible offers a view of destiny, emphasizing both the sovereignty of God and the free will of humanity. Key teachings include, God's sovereignty, human responsibility, God's purpose. Okay, so also destiny and free will, because it says that you have free will. But a lot of people, I don't think they should just, I mean, again, my opinion, I should say it this way. My opinion. I don't rely on those four things
Right.
like a lot of people do. A lot of people will rely on those four things in their life, and it seems like they move like robots. You know what I'm saying? But I do a thing called self-determination. Now, each of us have the ability to make our own choices. Everybody can make their own choices. A lot of people don't like to make choices because they might have in the past and they were wrong, and they just didn't like that feeling of being wrong, and so they just kind of follow by the book now. You understand what I'm saying? They just do the normal thing.
Yep.
What I think is that when you do that, when you so when someone attributes everything that happens to fate, you're basically ignoring and dismissing the very real responsibility each of us have to I'm gonna butcher this word, consciously consciously
Mm-hmm.
consciously approach our decisions in life, which are potentially rejecting the very important issue of personal agency and personal responsibility. Now, I believe it's critical to recognize the autonomy and the agency in ourselves and each other, which basically the ability of people in a community to interact with each other, you know, in healthy and beneficial ways for everyone involved, respecting the agency, blah, blah. It's kind of like taking responsibility for your actions. But what I'm saying is the main part is if you stick with those four things, then you're going to lose out on a lot of things if you don't decide to step out that box or step out that comfort zone and say, "Hey, I'm going to make my own destiny." I see. I guess I rely on destiny more than I do any of the other ones
Well, let's
because I'm in charge of that.
let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Why we're even talking about this podcast? Because I know some people are going, okay, I've listened to you for a good while amount of time here. What's going on? And for anybody that's new to Theory Paranormal, we appreciate you joining us. We talk about paranormal experiences here with me and Dalton. We use logic, theory, metaphysical principles, and the what if. And depending on the answers you get, in the middle there, I call the triangle of truth. That's your answer. But if you're a returning listener, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming back to hear us again. So the reason why this particular podcast is because I got to thinking a lot about life and about your choices you make and about, what I initially said about fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance. And then I was thinking about how everybody goes about their daily lives and how much that plays a factor. And then I thought about back in the day, how when individuals were living their lives nonstop, you had these things called gods and goddesses or deities. And that was mixed in with religion or following gods and goddesses and deities before organized religion came about. And each god or goddess or deity stood for something. So when things would happen in people's lives, whether it was by fate or destiny or coincidence or chance, people would look at specific gods or goddesses or deities to say they intervened in my life and made this happen. They gave foundation, they gave justification, they gave reason to why something happened in their life that they cannot understand or explain that gave them a certain outcome. Because there was a way to literally and figuratively and metaphorically point a finger and physically and say, that God right there is why I had a bountiful crop this year. That was our destiny. Or
Well,
why
it would
we
be the ones that they prayed to.
right. The ones that they worshipped or prayed to, you know.
Yes.
So what was interesting is in many mythologies, gods are not bound by fate, but they can be influenced by it or even challenge it. While fate might dictate the ultimate outcome of a person's life, gods can still intervene and affect the process. This can involve actions that attempt to alter a foreseen destiny, often with varying degrees of success. So, my point is every culture, every race, creed, color, literally around the globe, different varying times around history. Okay. Greek, Roman, Norse, mythology, for examples, they all had different types of goddesses of fates. And when you look at today's life, people get away from religion unless it's a modern organized religion, sometimes older religions that are still practiced. And people don't think about fate and destiny and coincidence and chance anymore. They overlook it. They step over it like, it's a newspaper on the ground and you're walking down the street. They don't think about it. And for a split second, I thought to myself, how cool would it be, hypothetically, if gods and goddesses and deities still did indeed exist the way people thought they did a long time ago? And they did influence
Yeah, but
people,
but that's the problem. People do not think about the gods and goddesses of old, of Egypt, Greek, or Norns, or anybody.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I mentioned in another podcast before when I had mentioned, you know, and again, I'll just go with a little bit of religion. We all practice, well, not all of us, because some of us don't, but a lot of the religion today is one sided. It's all, Jesus and Lord, and this is what you know. You don't hear anybody talking about, the Greek gods or the, Odin, the Norn gods
the Norse
or any other.
mythology or the Germanic
None of
gods
it.
and what's
Right. Because I've mentioned it. What happened to Zeus? What happened to Poseidon? What happened to, you know, Venus and, who was the goddess of love and I forget her name. But
Aphrodite.
anyway, Aphrodite.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Hades, of course, he was, the ruler of the underworld. But what happened to that? I've asked that question before. So, I mean, I think if you walk down the road and you try to talk Greek mythology, you'd have to be talking to somebody that's into that. It's not just a random thing anymore. Even though all these people are behind, because the Vikings were actually the first to reach America. They didn't even know it, but they were the first ones to come across Canada into America and settle for a little while. There's proof of that. And so even then, you look at the Vikings when they attacked England, you know, Britain, England, whatever, and they were in a Christian belief where here you had the Vikings believing in the Norse and the non in the Norn gods, the Odins and all them gods. And even all that, like I said, just disappeared, man. Like it's not even like you might find it in a museum, you might find it in some history book, but nobody talks about it.
Well, you also there's one particular goddess that comes to mind, and I know I'm going to butcher this, but it's Inanna. Inea?
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? Uh,
IANNA, or
I
how you say it?
N I N A N N A. So,
Yeah, and Nanya or something.
so the reason why I bring her up is she was a prominent goddess of Sumerian mythology, known for her multifaceted nature as a goddess of love, fertility, war, and sexuality. But the reason why I bring her up specifically, she was also considered the goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and political power. And she was eventually worshipped by Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians under the name Ishtar. Now, why I bring her up is right there it says the goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and political power. Right there, as you see, it changes from a god just being depicted as chance, destiny, coincidence, fate, to a goddess that is giving wisdom, that is spreading knowledge, that has something to do with political power. So it's no longer just influencing somebody's mindset to say, oh, this is how or why this series of events happened, but now it's actually a construct and a mechanism to influence society via wisdom, knowledge, and political power. And the reason why I'm bringing this together with fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance is because eventually the gods went to a form of influence, not just a form of enlightenment and knowledge and education. So it changed. There was a power shift. And you asked, well, why is it only certain predominant religions in this day and age? The key phrase right there is power shift. Things became more prevalent. If you have something for so long that is so much, but then something else comes along that's new and shiny, it's different, and it becomes spreading like a wildfire, then it becomes the new, I was going to say something, but it's kind of a pun, but it becomes the new gospel. and
Well, and
and
it's well, y-
I think honestly that's why a lot of the honestly I don't think I mean it's kind of factual throughout history. That's why all of the gods and goddesses and deities of old just kind of dissolved. Also with the different societies, the Babylonians and the Syrians and the Akkadians, for instance.
well, let me say this first of all. Again, we're not knocking anybody's religious beliefs at all. If you're Christian or Baptist or Buddhist or Hinduism or Muslim or whatever you are, that's fine. That's great. And I respect the fact that you serve those gods. What we're trying to say here is like you say the gods of old. If they're gods, they don't die. They're gods.
Well, I say
So
God.
where'd they
I
go?
say gods of old, meaning a reference to gods that predated newer civilizations and societies.
Right. Well, yeah, but see, okay, so I'll use your term. We went from the gods of old to the God of new. See, how does that? This is why I can't be religious because because if I'm researching Greek gods, even though okay they're Greek, if I'm researching Odin and the Viking gods, okay, those are Vikings. We have Vikings that well, I would say that if you went to an area where there's Vikings, I'm sure that they still worship their Viking gods. Would you think?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean,
Right. Okay.
people to this day still pay allegiance and loyalty and respect and wholeheartedly 100% utilize the old Norse gods as their de facto religion. And they rightly
Right.
should.
And
They should.
and and I haven't never been to Greek or Greece, and I'm hoping that they still worship the Greek gods in the way that they should. But this is why this is what when I go down a rabbit hole with this stuff, when it becomes, I'm just going to say about gods of all nature. There's
Goddesses.
just so much.
Oh, there's tons. There's tons.
So in Greek mythology, since we were kind of on that, you have the gods of fate are known as the Moirai. I can't pronounce it. Moirai, or they're called the Fates. They are three sisters who personify destiny. And I'm going to probably butcher some of these names, but it's Clotho, Clotho, the spinner who spins the thread of life. Then you have, I'm going to say, Lachis or Lachis. It's Lachiesis. She is who measures the length of the thread. And then you have Atropos, the inevitable, who cuts the thread and signifies death. These deities determine the fate of every individual, assigning their lifespan and experiences down to them passing, I guess. So, according to Greek mythology, these three ladies will start your thread of life. The one will measure the length of your thread of life, and the other one will just end it, basically. So,
Alrighty then.
right. Then you have, of course, the god of time. Do you know who the god of time is in Greek mythology?
Go ahead and inform me.
Kronos.
Chronos. And that's where they come up with a Chronos watch.
Yeah.
Chronographer. Aha. Latin word of timekeeping. Maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm not looking it up, but
Well, you're right. He is the god of time and destiny. The reason I mention him because he is the time and destiny. He is often depicted as the old man with the Sith or a clock, symbolizing the irreversible progression of time. That's Kronos. So that's another mythical Greek god. Now, in Asia, I'm not going to go through all of them and I'm not going to really describe them. You're welcome to look these up online. But in Asia, you have the Batara Kala. You have just the Kala, Kala. You have the Shiva and the Kali. And then it's fascinating to go to like Europe and you have Zaina, you have Myra, you have Aura, which is Ora. And if you go through a lot of the different areas in the world, this is what I'm saying. There's all kinds of different names and purposes. Now, the personification, another one in ancient Egypt, there was one called Shai or Shay, Shai. They say Sai, Sai, or Shay, Shay. He was the concept of fate and destiny in ancient Egypt. His name means that which is ordained, but is also related to the word Shay, meaning extent or amount. Now, they're saying that he's the only, I guess in Greek mythology, they're saying that he's the only male dude that deals with destiny, basically.
okay.
So in Greek mythology, I guess there's not another male form there. But what they say is the Egyptian believed that Shay determined the length of each person's life and was born with each person at their birth and remained at their side until they faced their final judgment before Osiris in the underworld. So they, instead of Hades, they had Osiris. And Shay he was a deity who could protect or damn a person as he offered a true account of each life in the hall of judgment. Even the gods and the pharaohs were in the hands of the fate. Ramesses the second called himself Lord of Shai, and basically who gives life in the instructions of the scribes of their states. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word. But basically, do not set your heart upon seeking riches, for there is no one who can ignore Shay or Shai. Do not set your thoughts on external matters, for every man there is his appointed time. So in his male form, Shai is often described as a goddess as the husband of Renenutet. I'm not even trying to pronounce that. They got all these weird names. But anyway, he was not often depicted in Egyptian art. So I guess he wasn't like you got Anubis. You know who Anubis is, right?
Yep.
So they are the keepers of the dead,
Hmm.
basically. They are the doorkeepers for the dead. And so I guess he wasn't often depicted in Egyptian art, but when he was, it was generally as a male god, particularly in scenes of the weighing of the heart. Less often, he was predicted as a cobra or a man with the head of a snake or as a birth brick with a human head or some sort. But anyway, what makes it interesting there is that he was a cobra or a snake. Now, that kind of sounds like what?
I'm not sure.
Evil?
Yeah.
Because, they say that, the devil, I guess, turned himself into a snake or something and got her to eat the apple or something. Because the snake in the.
The poison
Anyway,
apple?
yes.
Yes.
So, in as far as Shy goes, I mean, there's a big long thing about him, but he was basically your man in Egyptian lore to determine the life of a person, which is, I guess, we all have, which is kind of funny because in those times they mentioned so ancient Egypt. Oh, that was Greek. Okay, yeah. So Greek had their three ladies. Egypt has their one guy, Shy. That's what it is. Okay. Because I was thinking, wow, didn't I just kind of mention? So the Norns in the mythology, the Norns are the three goddesses. Here we go with three goddesses again,
Yep.
who control the destiny of every living being.
Yep.
So I'm going to say that the Norns, I'm going to say that they go along with the Greek mythology. Well, their goddess is known as Erd, Urt, and then you have a Vera Ande or Andi, Veroandi, and Skuld, Skuld. Now, these three do the same three as the Greek goddesses who weave the threads of fate and tend to the world tree, basically ensuring it stays alive at the center of the cosmos, is what they believe.
So, with everything we've just unpackaged, do you think, honestly, when fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance come in people's lives in this day and age, do you think anybody really thinks at all and really analyzes their life and say, what are the odds of this happening? Or looking at the totality of, wow, I can't believe everything aligned up to get me to this point. Or if this wouldn't have happened just right, Like, for instance, I, unfortunately, my younger life, I was driving a car that was cruise control and it wasn't working correctly. And I ended up doing a 180 going down the interstate about 80 miles an hour. And I wanted to get in the left lane, looked out my peripheral, saw nothing but green. I started moving over, and there was a humongous SUV that was forest green, same color as all the pine trees that were, past the two lanes, drops down about 10 yards or so, 15 yards max. And then there's nothing but a big forest of pine trees. And so the car I was in ended up doing a 180. And instead of me facing with the flow of traffic, I am looking at the flow of traffic coming at me. And I'm still going with the flow of traffic. And next thing I know, the car goes careening off past the vehicle, the SUV that was there. And the car came at a certain angle and hit the dirt and then smacked up against the pine trees, going 80 miles an hour. Believe it or not, the car got dented in 3 places only. It got dented in the back left quarter panel. It was, if I remember correctly, it was dented in the front left quarter panel, and then the front right bumper was dented also. And there was a lot of dirt impacted under the back right tire. Now, the reason why I bring out those 3 points is this: 80 miles an hour, car flips 180, goes flying into a bunch of pine trees with only 10, 15 yards max. And for all intents and purposes, me and the passenger, we should have been dead. But when the car impacted, dirt started impacting under the back right tire to slow momentum of the car. At the angle the car was going into the pine trees, it wasn't dead on. It was literally, I would say, at a 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock position. So for anybody that looks at a clock and you got the different timepieces, 1 to 12, the car was facing north at 2 o'clock and the rear was facing at 7 o'clock. When the car slammed into the forest and the pine trees, the car got braced at the 2 most impactful points that the car needed to absorb all of the impact, the collision, which was the back left quarter panel, the front left quarter panel, and the front right bumper where it happened. And by doing that, I kid you not, the car was able to be pushed out of where it was, and we drove off, besides the 3 dents on the car. Not big dents either. And I remember sitting there staring, looking out, and there were humongous pine trees that fell down that were pointing directly at the windshield that could have easily just came through. That was it. I know this story is kind of long, but I had to paint the picture. And my point is that could have happened 1,000 different ways and it would have been fatal, but it wasn't. Do I believe something happened that kept me alive? 110%. Do I believe that there was some sort of destiny there, or fate, or coincidence, or chance that played a factor into me walking away? 110% yes. Everybody will have experiences in their life that will give them a reason to sit there for a moment and ponder, how did I just have this experience and walk away from it? Or how fortunate I am that this happened,
Well, people ain't going to sit there and get that logical about it. They're just going to be like, oh my God, it's luck.
Oh.
Or my guardian angel protected me.
Right. Well, exactly. And that belief back then, before my experiences now and my knowledge, that exactly was my thought process. I was like, oh, my guardian angel, And
so
go
ahead, finish.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm just saying is that, should I have been alive from that? Heck no. Not in the slightest. But I mean, come on.
Well, it's a lucky thing. Now, if you'd just went head on to a tree, yeah, that's it. It was lucky that the dirt spun the rear tire and you hit that tree at a certain angle and this tree at a certain angle and that tree at a certain angle, that you basically was a pinball. And that's what saved you.
Right. I was a pinball, but all 3 impact points where the car went in at the exact perfect angle to hit those 3 trees that were just thick enough and big enough to take the brunt of the weight. Because we looked around, there was a bunch of small trees that couldn't have done it. And it was just like, you got to be kidding me, So
let's go. I know we got a little bit of time left, so let's shift it to, of course, my favorite, not so favorite. I'm just being sarcastic. I hate the scientific theories, but I always got to go there. So Hannah Critchlow. So what makes us who we are our thoughts and lifestyle choices. Basically, are they hardwired into our DNA, or are we the product of our upbringing and environment? So basically, is it in our DNA or is it just the way we were brought up? So when you get up in the morning, you think to yourself, was I really predetermined to eat that entire pack of basically waffles for breakfast this morning? These are the kinds of questions that neuroscientist and science outreach fellow Hannah Critchlow ambitiously seeks to answer in her I'm not even going to say it, in her thing. And So, what it is the concept of fate has been around since the ancient Greeks, persisting through literature and folklore for about 3,000 years. Whether or not we have the power to influence our own destiny is mind boggling to think about and has been a topic of discussion for years. Critchlow explains that everything from our genetic lineage to our childhood upbringing, the friends we make, and the risks we take basically has the power to shape our brain and alter our perception of the world around us, influencing our thoughts and actions without us even knowing. She also explores how fundamental desires, such as our favorite foods, our choice partner, and our hopes and dreams, as well as the more complex parts of our life, like our career choices, religious beliefs, the tendency to drink alcohol, are effectively programmed into our brain circuit board. So, does this mean basically that we should all just take our hands off the wheel? No pun to your story. And surrender ourselves to the unfaltering path laid before us by fate itself? Well, not exactly. The human brain is an unfathomably complex machine made up of 100 billion neurons, give or take a few billion, each connected to thousands of others. So it's no wonder that the big mushy mass that makes a few of its own shortcuts by establishing repeating thought patterns. So she considers whether or not we can change our mind and completely reverse these learned behaviors. Still, to the average pessimist like herself, it could seem like this makes for some quite of, basically bleak reading, is what she says. But the down to earth nature of her writing is consistently engaging. The earlier chapters led to her as an unexpectedly deep and personal introspection into why my own mind functions the way it does. So it's no exaggeration to say that we are living in the era of the brain. So I'm taking it, neurology and genomics have come a long way in the past few decades, and that the science, they call it the science of fate, provides an excellent overview of how we can use these developments to understand some of the human mind's greatest intricacies.
Huh.
It's a fantastic point of entry for anyone interested in the human brain. So, what I'm kind of like, I just kind of gave like some of the main parts of that thing. So, what I'm gathering, the scientific people are saying that it really doesn't have anything to do with religion or beliefs or deity. It's your mind, it's your brain. Basically, maybe in your DNA or your upbringing or people you hang around with or whatever is what actually constitutes your fate, your destiny, your chance, your serendipity, etc. What's your thought process on that?
Well, I will pull from my wonderful graduate degree, and I will say it involves the brain, believe it or not. But in reference to learning and understanding and prioritization and categorization and making logical sense of things, it's a known fact, regardless of known variables or education or understanding or not, the human psyche and brain will always try to justify and make sense of whatever is put before it, to give it reason, to give it logic, to give it proof of why said event happened, which I found interesting when I was doing studying and did all that wonderful stuff with that degree. And, you know, it's an easy out, in my opinion, to say, well, rather somebody is educated on whatever the subject is or not, no matter what you put before them, they're going to come up with a reason why. I think that in itself is the main marvel and mystery sometimes of the brain of a human being or any animal at any point in time, because everybody wants to understand. Everybody wants something to make sense. Nobody's want to be left alone with an event or anything that's happened in their life that doesn't make sense because everybody wants to rationalize it, justify it, give it definition and thought of why something happened. Does everybody always come up with a correct answer or the same answer? No. But to each and everybody that does try to come up with an answer, whatever answer they do come up with is justified in their own mind. So,
Well, the other thing you have, one more thing. I know we're trying to make it an hour. We got 2 more podcasts to finish up for season 2 that are just going to be like an hour long. But you ever heard of a thing called Hellenistic astrology?
I've heard of astrology, but I can't say I've heard of the reference Hellenistic to go with it.
Yeah, so like Helen, the name Helen, HELLENISTIC, Hellenistic.
Oh, Hellenistic.
So, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't make a
So
difference to me. No
basically,
idea still what that means.
right. So it basically it emerged in the Hellenistic period. I guess that was during the Alexander the Great period.
Okay.
If my mind recalls that he was considered to be in the Hellenistic period, and it reached to the height of popularity during the time of the Roman Empire. Now, not to get all into it, but it deals with the New Testament were written, Christianity, all that stuff. But the purpose of the book is to provide an overview of the original tradition of Western astrology. Now, I'm just going to go to the point. They're saying that astrology, that this, you can look up this Hellenistic astrology, but it's basically Hellenistic astrology, the study of fate and fortune. So they're going to go into astrology as part of a study of fate and fortune that started back during Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire.
And that makes sense
Just,
because they didn't have modern science and everything else, so they had to use things to correlate logic in their head back then, which astrology and the stars and the sky and everything that goes with it.
right. So it deals with fate and fortune. So just something else to throw out there. I mean, like we always get in these rabbit holes that we can just keep digging. But like I said, we're trying to keep it at around an hour. So anyway, just want to throw that Hellenistic astrology. Anybody can feel free that's listening to go research that. Maybe in another episode, we'll talk about some of that. We'll throw that out there.
Sounds like a plan. So, everybody, we appreciate you listening. That is going to conclude episode 10 of season 2 of Theory Paranormal on the words that we all got to hear previously of fate, destiny, coincidence, and chance. We appreciate everybody listening to us on this podcast. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at info@theoryparanormal.com. And me or Dalton will get back to you and answer whatever questions you have. If you have any footage, rather it be video, audio, photography, footage of photos that you would like for us to review to give a professional opinion on, which we have people do, we're more than happy to give you our opinion and let you know what we think of if you captured anything. And as far as it goes, if anybody's interested in contacting us and has any thoughts on commentary they want to give us on any past podcasts we've done, or if there's anything in particular anybody wants to hear, or if they want to add commentary to have a additional podcast on something that we've done, please feel free to email us also, and we'll take that into consideration with what we already have lined up and see how that can go. And if we do something like that, we will reach out and let you know when that podcast will be that you have an interest in. So,
Also, let you know that if you send any photos or you send anything and you don't want it publicized, we will respond to you only. We will not bring it out in the podcast, or we won't talk about it. It stays like a client privilege, paranormal client privilege thing. If you decide that we should keep it secret, it's a secret. So
yep.
just so you know that, so you're not afraid to send us something, and if you just want to talk to us about it, and it's a one-on-one deal, it won't go any further than that. We have a lot of people that do that. That's why we hardly mention photos or instances of stuff being sent because a lot of people, it deals with their private homes and their private lives. And so they prefer just to keep it private. And that's what we do. So just to throw that out there as well.
100%. So, with that being said, as always, as we say here at Theory Paranormal, don't be afraid to ask questions.